Hi, you're listening to This Is Not Your Practice Life. I'm your host, Macy Renee, and we are going on a journey together, my friends. I'm a certified life and emotional intelligence coach. And if you really want to step into your highest self, there are a few non-negotiables you're going to have to learn, and I am just the person to help you do it. No matter your past, I'm here to help you create a more fulfilling future. So stick around with me. Not only will I teach you how to navigate your brain's daily mind drama, but I'll help you actually understand your mind, your emotions, why you do the things you do, and why others do the things they do. Most importantly, I'll help you build the self-awareness skills to create whatever results you want. It's never too late to change the trajectory of your life. After all, this is not your practice life. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. My name is Macy and I am thrilled to have you with me today. If you are a returning listener, welcome back to the podcast. And if you are a brand new listener, welcome. I'm so excited to have you. I don't know how you found me, but I'm glad you did. And I hope that you find this podcast helpful. With that being said, I'm going to share a few things that may be helpful to you. One, if you want to make sure you're always up to date, no matter what episode you're listening to, whether you listen to the newer ones first or you go back to the very beginning, one of the ways you can always stay in touch with me is by finding me on social media, on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. I am at Macy Renee Coaching. I'm not super active on TikTok at this point, but that might change. And also going to macyrenee.com and getting on my email list. That is going to be the ways that you will keep from missing any updated news, announcements, offers, specials, bonuses, freebies, programs, all of the things. Now, that being said, I'm so excited that you're here, and I want you to know that a lot of my podcast episodes build upon one another, especially in the beginning. So if you're listening to some episodes with titles that resonate for now, that's wonderful. But if you're really wanting to get the full experience of my work and how you can build a very strong foundation, even from this free resource, my recommendation is to go back to the very beginning. Go back to episode 1, at least listen to those first 20 episodes and kind of build yourself, a good, strong, sturdy foundation. And then you can bounce around if you want to or continue to go in order. But that being said, what I recommend if you do go back to the very beginning, that periodically you're listening to a newer episode just to make sure you're not missing anything. However, if you're following me on social media and on my email list, there's a good chance you won't miss anything because that's where I tend to communicate with my audience most, especially my email list. So that being said, if you're not on my email list, make sure you go to macyrenee.com and get on there. Now, what I want to talk about this week is mean girl mentality and why it happens. I feel like maybe I did a little bit of an episode on this a while back. I don't remember how I titled it, but I want to talk about where this comes from because one of the things that I hear a lot from women that I'm coaching, especially one-on-one, is that it's really hard for them to find friend groups or to find adult friends. And maybe that's the episode that I talked a little bit about this in. I did an episode a while back of how to make adult friends. So it's resonating with me that maybe some of this was covered there, but I don't remember. And I want to go a different direction with this today to talk about the importance of emotional intelligence and why it can be so hard to make adult friends and some of the things that come up, especially for women. So if you're a guy and you're listening to this episode, it may not apply to you as much, but maybe if you wonder why your wife or significant other has trouble making friends or keeping friends or finding friends or interacting with her friends, then you can still listen to this episode as a way to kind of understand more of the brain and how things work. So first things first, there are a multitude of reasons for why we show up in the world the way that we're showing up. We show up in the world as individuals based on things that we were taught, how we were raised, the influences that were the most important in our life. So we model a lot of behavior based on what we see, whether that behavior is normal or not, is questionable, but we will consider it normal just because if that is the routines and behaviors we saw growing up, then even if it's not quote unquote normal, it will feel normal to us because that is what we learned. Our mindset deeply impacts how we show up in the world on an individual level. Our belief systems really impact the way that we show up on an individual level. Our emotions highly, highly influence the way that we show up on an individual level, and so many other things. Memories, traumas. I mean, the list goes on for why people interact, communicate, behave, and show up the way that they do, okay? And here's the thing, we're all at different skill levels of this as well, because how someone shows up and what they are aware of really plays a part in the way that they show up in general in the world. And so what I want to talk about in terms of friend groups and friendships and why it can be hard to make friends as adults and why mean girl mentality comes up so much. A lot of it is due to the lack of self-awareness, the triggers and things inside of us that people mirror that we maybe have not healed or addressed or even have been aware of, okay, and how we emotionally respond to it. And oftentimes the work that goes into being compassionate and empathetic for someone else's experience or personality that doesn't match our own, okay? So we will find circles of friends that we really vibe with and we really connect with. And then there are also going to be people that come into our life that maybe we feel a little bit rocky with or unsure of, or their personality can be a challenge to us. And the natural human response is to run away or isolate or avoid our triggers. And a huge part of emotional intelligence work, when you're really actively deciding to do your work, especially when it comes to mindset and emotional intelligence, it's not allowing those triggers to make you flee the situation, right? Or the person or whatever. It's really to say, what about them or that situation or that scenario has triggered something inside of me? Because actually what it is it's a gift to figure out what pieces of you may be unexplored, right? Maybe the parts of you that are unexplored are like how you communicate or how you people please, or belief systems that you feel were impressed upon you that you don't agree with, but you don't know how to communicate what your belief system is. Or maybe you were taught you weren't allowed to ever have an opinion. And so if someone comes across as opinionated, it can be bothersome. But my whole point in saying that is explore, the act of exploring different things that arise for you when you're interacting with other women or friend groups is actually a really important thing to do. But it goes against the natural human response, which is to delete, block, leave out, avoid, run away, maybe even attack, impulsively react to the stimulus or to the quote unquote trigger or person or whatever. And so I want to share a little bit more about how mean girl mentality happens and why the work that I'm doing within my communities I find to be very important, especially in how I grow as a leader, just because it's a natural human thing that will come about. I don't expect anybody to not be human and to have things arise. But what I really want to be teaching anybody that comes in my community and is building and growing and creating friendships and all the things, that they're not also subconsciously aborting, I don't know why I said that, aborting their work, right? Or removing themselves from their work. They're not letting the triggers lead their behaviors, but rather they are noticing any kind of triggers and working through them. That's really the difference between having strong, emotionally intelligent friendships and continuing to grow and foster, as opposed to becoming cliquey or reclusive or separate, from the friendships that you're trying to build. So oftentimes, what comes up in a mean girl mentality is the fact that women have a hormone called oxytocin, okay? And you've probably heard of oxytocin. It happens a lot. It releases a lot in romantic relationships. So whenever you start to crush on someone and they start to crush on you and you're excited to text them and call them and you're, daydreaming about like all the romantic things you all are going to do and experiences you're going to have, and you're just in that cloud of like, I love this person, or I really like this person, or I can't wait to hear from this person. All of that is being driven by oxytocin, okay, which is a natural hormone that your brain is releasing, a chemical it's releasing that feels really good. I kind of call it the love drug, right? It's the love drug. And so it comes up a lot in relationships, whether those relationships are healthy or not. Like when you're watching your friends date, for instance, and they're just like head over heels in love, you know that the oxytocin is running deep, right? And that eventually those hormones kind of shift a little bit and kind of slow down a little bit once you've been in a relationship for a while. It's kind of like once the drug is no longer running through your veins, you're able to see things a little bit differently sometimes. Now, if you're in a really healthy, loving relationship, that oxytocin is going to be more present more often, okay? Now, the other way that oxytocin releases is during childbirth, okay? So for a lot of women, whenever they say, the moment I saw my child and they were put on my chest and I heard that first cry, all the pain in my body just left, and it didn't even matter what the nurses or doctors were doing after that. All I could focus on was the love, like the just unbelievable, unconditional love that I felt for my baby. You hear it over and over again. You hear how that moment changes most women's lives when they give birth to their first child, their second child, their third, like whatever. And again, that feeling, that strong, unbreakable love is from the chemical oxytocin. Okay. And what's interesting is that Pitocin, like if you need to be induced, Pitocin is the synthetic version of oxytocin. And it's interesting too, because what I have found and heard from a lot of moms that had to be induced or were on a Pitocin drip is that they didn't necessarily have that super, super strong reaction to their baby, maybe after their baby was born. And there's a lot of research now showing it's because, the Pitocin is the synthetic version. And if that mom wasn't able to produce the oxytocin on their own, then they have a little bit more of a, like their labor might be delayed a little bit, or they might have more trouble during labor because their body has now had to use Pitocin rather than the natural form of oxytocin. So very just interesting kind of stuff. I'm a research nerd and I love, I love like medical journal studies and things like that. And so anytime my brain goes down a rabbit hole, I just really like to research, and I love science. That's what my degrees are in. My bachelor and master's degree are both science degrees. So I really love it. But anyways, and I say that being that I'm a science nerd, but also don't get it twisted. I'm very much a holistic, crunchy kind of hippie as well. Not to the extreme as some people can be, but I feel like I have a good balance between loving science and also being like, okay, but let's also look at holistic things as well. So anyways, all of that to say is that when women birth their children, that oxytocin release is very, very powerful, and it is what creates that deep, deep, deep experience of love. And that when a mom says, I didn't feel connected to my kid, or, I didn't have necessarily that reaction. Sometimes it could be just due to the fact their body didn't naturally produce it. It didn't naturally go into labor on its own, and it had to be put on a synthetic version, aka Pitocin. So there are several ways that oxytocin influences what we feel. And one of the third ways is women gathering in groups and gossiping creates oxytocin release. Okay. So my whole point in sharing this is that when it comes to women and groups, oxytocin running through your body is going to happen as you gather, and a lot of times as you're talking, and especially as it becomes gossipy. Because what I hear from a lot of women is, I don't want cattiness, I don't want drama, I don't want gossip, I don't want clickiness. And I'm the same way, right? I don't like that. But I know the human reason that creates that, and the human reason that clicks and groups and the urge to talk about people or to go into those deep kind of gossipy like conversations or talk about other people is because the brain gets to release oxytocin in those moments. So if you haven't had kids for a while, right, or you haven't been in a new dating relationship for a while, your brain is seeking that chemical release just as it seeks the same kind of pleasure from picking up your phone, from eating sugar, right? It's like our brain and our body becomes addicted to even our own drugs and chemicals that we release from our brain. And oxytocin is no different. Women gathering together and being like, did you hear about so-and-so? Or did you know about this? Or whatever. That's an oxytocin release. Now, while that is a natural thing that will occur in groups of women, the emotional intelligence part that keeps it from becoming or being a mean girl gathering, a mean girl energy, a gossipy, clicky experience is the hyper awareness to be staying in your work on a mindset level, on an emotionally intelligent level, and on a self-awareness level. Okay, so it would be like when you notice yourself being triggered by someone, instead of going off and talking, like gossiping about it, right? Or even maybe isolating a person that you feel triggered by, it's really asking yourself in that moment, what about them or their behavior or what's happening right now is really creating something in me? Like, what is it? Let me get clear on what it is and let me work through this in the most non-messy way possible. Or, let me make sure that I am using my tools and my resources to make sure I don't go down the slippery slope of mean girl energy. And I'm going to tell you an experience in my journey of me being a mean girl that really changed everything for me. The moment that I realized it was happening and how easy it came about, and how when I reflected on it, I did not like it. I did not like that version of myself. It didn't feel like the highest version of myself. It felt very ick. And when I thought about anybody treating me, whether it was directly or indirectly, the same way I was treating this other woman, it made me feel a lot of disgust. And it's why I really push the emotional intelligence work that I do, and am so passionate about teaching it, and how I lead groups and the communities that I build and the events that are organized underneath my community, because it can be such a slippery slope. And I want to make sure that everybody that comes in my community and is engaging with one another is in a safe environment where as soon as they can feel this bubbling or coming up, they have access to coaching and resources and addressing it head on. And so I'm going to share this little tidbit with you. But back when I was first introduced to coaching, there was an event that my coach put on in a different state, and she invited me to go to it. And what she did was host a dinner so that the women that all wanted to go could all meet each other and talk at dinner, and then we could all go see each other again at this event the following day. And I remember sitting down at the table, and I remember the two women that I was, sitting there with, and we got to talking. And at that time, I was in a relationship marketing company, and the women that I was sitting with, they were also in a relationship marketing company. And we were kind of in competing companies. And we also had very different compensation plans within our companies. And mine was definitely more in favor of the people winning, I guess you could say, or like having a lot of bonuses, money, perks, all the things. And you've heard me tell the story about like the Lexus and the car bonus and how I wanted to be able to get the Lexus so I could sell my Honda and give it to my sister. And so all of that was included in our comp plan, which was very different than this competitor company. And we were sitting, at the table, and we started talking, and I was asked what I do, and then I asked what, that person did. And I could feel a little bit of that cattiness energy that women sometimes have towards each other. I could feel myself feeling catty and defensive towards the selling points that person tried to share. And then I could feel, the opposite being true, like her defensive mechanism coming up when I would share selling points of mine. It felt very catty, and looking back was very kind of like emotionally immature, and us both fighting to be right. And it's kind of funny looking back on, but I can remember feeling a little bit turned off by this person at dinner. And just being like, ugh, gross. Like, I'm so triggered by this person. I don't want to be around her. Okay. In true universe fashion, the very thing that triggers us that we don't want is sometimes what it knows we need energetically to grow to our next level or to resolve what will keep us stuck. And I ended up signing up for the very first coaching retreat I ever went to with my coach. And this was in Tennessee. And the woman that I had met also signed up for this retreat, right? And her friend and everything like that. And I was a little bit shocked and irritated when I got to this retreat and saw her there, because I thought, oh God, here we go again. And I had told my friend, I feel like, there's a little bit of this catty tension, or like I definitely am bothered by her and something in her personality. And I think maybe she might be bothered by something in mine, and maybe she's nice, but I can't figure out why I'm so bothered by it. So anyways, we were navigating this weekend together, and sure enough, like, we get put in a bunk room. And so we're all going to be in this room together. Like, it's this little family. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like every universal lesson, right? I would not have probably chosen that room at that time. And yet I'm in the room with this person that is very much frustrating me. And a lot of it was around, her beliefs and her business and what she thought about her business and why it was the best thing ever. And me having, an opposing opinion about me thinking my business was the best thing ever. Again, we were in relationship marketing at the time. And the attitudes, both subconsciously and consciously, that we had towards each other, and my body wanting to fight or flight or, freeze or fawn or whatever it wanted to do. I just wanted to get out of there, get the hell away from there. And so fast forward into a coaching circle that we all end up in. There's like maybe, 16, 17 women there, my coach, her coach. And we're sitting around in the circle, and everybody's taking turns getting coached. And I remember that I needed coaching really, really bad, but I was way too guarded to feel comfortable asking. My thought process into that retreat is, it's nobody's business to know my business. I don't need to share anything personal that's going on in my life. I don't want to be judged. I don't want these women having thoughts about me. I don't want them to think that I'm not put together, because I know if I start talking, I'm going to start crying, and then I'm going to look not put together. And with this underlying, kind of feeling that I had towards this other woman, I didn't want to be vulnerable and appear weak when I felt subconsciously like there was something in me that had to fight to be strong. And I absolutely refused to get coaching. With each woman that would raise her hand for coaching, I felt myself getting further and further away from wanting to ask. And after maybe 2 hours of sitting in this circle, we finally got around to almost everyone, and there were 2 of us left. There was myself and there was that woman. And my coach said, we have time for one more who wants to get coaching. And my best friend was there with me, and she kept nudging me. And she was like, get coaching, get coaching, get coaching. And I was like, absolutely not. I'm not going to get coaching. And she was like, you need to get coaching. Like, I know the things that you're not telling everybody here, and you need to get coaching. And I'm like, oh, absolutely not. So the mean girl energy vibe that I had with this other person, she ended up being the one that raised her hand to get coaching. And her coaching, you guys, was so vulnerable and so deep and so moving. And as I sat there and watched her walls crack open, total vulnerability, total messiness, total ugliness in the fact that I could see the heartache and the pain, and it was just vulnerable at a level that I can't describe. There were tears, and there were almost like moans and groans of pain, of opening herself up and letting all of us see what really was behind that guarded persona and that strong persona, and that, what was beyond that armor. And I sat there and I felt just so much almost shame that I had felt any kind of ick towards her or mean girl energy, like that I even engaged in it, that I forgot compassion, that I forgot empathy, that I forgot that everybody's behavior is driven by so many factors that we're often not thinking of. And then I sat there and thought, none of these women know my story or will know my story because I chose not to show up for myself. I chose not to get coaching. And I really spent the last day of that retreat really moved by this woman that I was once triggered and bothered by, and also so disappointed in myself that I acted in that energy towards her or around her, and disappointed in myself that I forgot in that moment to even allow myself to be that vulnerable, to allow myself to be seen, to actively do my work. Like, at the end of the day, it was, you know what? She's here and she did her work. And you know what you're not doing? Your work. You know what I mean? Like, that was really what it highlighted for me in that moment was, Macy, she's doing her work. She was vulnerable. She did ask for coaching. And now you're able to see what was driving everything about the things that bothered you, about her. And now you know the real and raw truth that she was so afraid to share because she was afraid of things like mean girl energy. And you're the one even subconsciously participating in it. And now also you're leaving this retreat and you didn't get everything that you came for because you were guarded, because you were afraid of mean girl energy, but yet you participated in it, even as in a subconscious way. Okay. It really moved me. And I remember getting in the car and my best friend asking me, what did you think about it? And the first thing that I said out of my mouth was, I will no longer participate in mean girl energy. I refuse. And she was like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, I just realized that it takes so much work for people to be vulnerable. It takes so much work as women to get in a group of strangers and to allow themselves to be themselves and to be vulnerable and to share. And, I know how hard that was this weekend for me. And I'm leaving this retreat disappointed that I didn't do it. But also what I know is that I don't want to be this level of judgmental. I don't want to have these negative thoughts towards other women that I am getting to know or barely even know. I don't want to participate in this kind of behavior ever again. I absolutely refuse. And I will only go forward trying to understand people's behaviors and have empathy for them and figure out what triggers that they highlight in me is my work to figure out. And that really became my mission going forward. And it really, truly is the way that I host my communities and run my programs and my in-person events, is to make sure, because again, I don't expect that women who come together who have not been friends their entire lives, I don't expect that their humanness will be absent just because they're doing mindset and emotional intelligence work. What I expect when you get groups of women together is that there are going to be moments that feel painful or triggering or like a lot for your nervous system. And the most important thing that I really want to make sure is the case is that nobody is engaging in that mean girl energy, whether consciously or subconsciously, or forgetting that they have their own work in that trigger themselves. It's really, really important. And what I also know is that it's important for me to constantly remember or remind my audience and even myself, right, that when you get in a group of women and your brain so badly wants that oxytocin release, that sometimes it can have you engaging in things that do not maybe match the person or the woman that you desire to be, especially when you think of being a good friend or being an empathetic human, even if you're not going to be a friend. And that is something that is really, really important to remember. And what I want you to take away from this podcast, because as you grow, your circles will naturally change. Okay. As you put yourself in different communities or groups, you're going to have moments where, you know, your body still has reactions, your mind has reactions. It's going to have great ones and wonderful memories and wonderful experiences. But don't think that just because you're doing the work that it's also going to have, it's going to be, you know, perfect. And, you know, that's just, we can never escape our humanness. But that being said, it means you have to be super aware of the way that you show up in the world and how you're treating people and making it a very conscious decision, as opposed to letting your subconscious old patterns and behaviors want to isolate or engage in energy, mean girl energy, or whatever energy that isn't going to best serve you or the people that you're surrounding yourself by. So this is my reminder, you know, to all of you that are growing, you know, well, a lot of you are adults, but as you are adults and you're growing friendships, building friendships, meeting people, that you remember, you know, how you want to be and how you want to treat other people, and to remember to always go back to your work whenever you feel bothered by something, and to ask for the help. When you notice it, get help with it, right? Because otherwise it's really easy to fall into traps where maybe people are not going to be treated the way that is fair, right? Just based on your own triggers that maybe you're not resolving. And so I hope that this episode helps, because I think that, you know, all of us as adults really want to create more friendships, but we are still human. We still have the inner child in us. We still have the inner teen in us, and we still have everyday actions that have to take place as our emotionally intelligent adult, and that takes so much consciousness. So just know that if you're engaging in my communities by anything, like in anything that I am hosting or putting together, whether it's the yearly retreat that I am now doing every year for you to meet women that are like-minded and to reconnect with women that you already know, or connect with new women that you don't know, or if you happen to ever get into a round of the hybrid experience where you're coaching together for 6 months and then you meet in person at a luxury retreat for 4 nights. Just know I am very, very conscious and attentive to my containers and to the women, and to be accessible for any anything that comes up, and that if there is ever anything that comes up, I really, really encourage you to come forth and to have it addressed, because I know most of my clients and I know who you desire to be, and I know how easy it is to go into the brain's protective patterns that often come with our inner teen and our emotionally immature versions of ourselves. And so, that's just really, really important work that I want to make sure I'm always being mindful of in anything that I am creating for my audience. So I hope this episode helps you. And if you ever need help in this ballpark, just make sure that you get in contact with me. You can always schedule a free consult at MacyRenee.com for 60 minutes. And we can talk about what you've got going on, where you are in your life currently, where you want to be, what changes you want to make, and if I am the person that feels like a good fit to help you. So thank you so much for being here. And I can't wait to see you again next week. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye. Hey there. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. If you'd like to connect on social media, you can find me on both Instagram and Facebook at Macy Renee Coaching. And if you want to stay up to date on all of my offers, announcements, and inspirational emails, you can join my email list at MacyRenee.com. In addition, if there's a way that I can further support you in your coaching journey, you can schedule a free 60-minute consult at MacyRenee.com anytime you want, so we can discuss the best options for you. I look forward to seeing you next week, and I hope you have an amazing day. Bye.